Setting boundaries in your life with other people, within yourself, is so important because these boundaries are what makes us feel safe, what makes us feel honestly better a lot of times. And when you think of a boundary, you might think of like something to keep people out or, you know, keep something in. But it's a lot more than that, especially when it comes to like boundaries in relationships. Um, there's really like three different types of boundaries, and the first one, actually, the first two that I'm going to explain are like kind of the ones that we are trying to shift away from, and then the last one is the healthiest one, which is basically just healthy boundaries. But the first one is porous boundaries, and those are when like good things and bad things from other people come in and out of your life as they please, and you don't necessarily want like all the bad things that other people are bringing into your life all the time. So that's one of the negative parts of porous boundaries, is just letting anyone kind of do whatever they want in your life and like as it relates to you, and you not saying no, I don't want to do this if like someone's making you do something, or like if someone asks you to do them a favor and it's like really complicated for you to go through with it, it'd be really out of your way, you know, tend to just say yes, okay, I'll do it for you, and then people start taking advantage of you sometimes. That's porous boundaries. The other one is the opposite, basically. It's rigid boundaries, and those are really not letting any good or bad things, like positive or negative things, into your life from other people. And so it's really hard to open up to other people, to let love in, to let anything in, and that's mostly because you have your guard up and you're trying to keep the bad things out. But in keeping the bad things out, you're also keeping the good things out. And so this goes for a lot of people that have had trauma in the past, or just like have had bad relationships with people, bad friendships. You know, you kind of learn to not trust people, to shut them out, and to not let them in. And we're trying to shift away from that as well if you're on that side of the spectrum. But the healthy boundaries is the part we want to be in, where you are letting people in the right amount. You're basically saying no when you need to say no, and you're saying yes when good things are coming your way. I do have a lot of examples of these. Like, a lot of times healthy boundaries are not necessarily like all yes or all no. They're more like, how much am I going to let this person in? How much, or how close can we be, basically. Healthy boundaries includes like being selective about who you let in and out of your life, and knowing that it takes time to let others in and to trust them. It also like is about learning when to say no, and learning when to share personal information and when to kind of like keep things more private. It's acknowledging both your own values and other people's values, and supporting others when they want to be supported, and also not being too involved either. And it's also like assertive communication. Sometimes you can communicate that you want something or need something, but you're not doing it in a way that people realize that this is something that you really do want or need. You're kind of more passive about it, and then you end up not getting your needs met because you weren't able to communicate effectively. Those are all healthy boundaries, and just like the different factors and parts of it. I know I tend to have more porous boundaries. I think I let people in way too quickly, and also am more likely to be a people pleaser sometimes, and I'm really working on that, honestly. But I tend to also like say yes to a lot of things that I probably should say no to, if that makes sense. A lot of those things are like favors or doing what other people want instead of what's best for me. It's always something that we can work on. I don't think anybody has healthy boundaries all the time, because it's really hard when you're in a different mental space. You don't always have the healthiest ways of coping, and really this is like kind of shifting back and forth depending on what mood you're in. So this is definitely something that everyone has to work on more times than not in their life if you want to have like healthy relationships. There are also different types of boundaries. There's like different aspects of your life that you're kind of, I guess, I don't know how to put it. Like there's different parts of your life that you divide into little parts, I guess. Like, I guess I'll just get into it. I'm being really confusing right now, but there are 7 different types of boundaries. There's mental boundaries, so you have like the freedom to have your own thoughts, your own values, and your own opinions, and other people do as well have those freedoms, and that's like a mental boundary. Like if you're feeling like you're not able to have your own thoughts and opinions without clashing with other people's and being respectful of other people's, then that's where something is going wrong. There's also emotional boundaries, and like how emotionally available you are to others. I think this is a big one for me. Like I'm really open with my emotions, sometimes too much. I can like scare people away sometimes. But also for the rigid boundaries, you can like literally never open up to other people, and that can be detrimental to your own health sometimes, because sometimes you need support from other people, and it's really hard when people don't know what's going on in your head. And I feel like, not to get all like societal problems or whatever, but like I feel like a lot of times society tells men in particular that they have to keep their emotions in and be like strong, and I've heard this a lot from clients where I work, because it's a all-male facility, but a lot of times they want to keep their emotions in because that's the way they've been taught. Like you can't show weakness, you can't show emotions basically. And they kind of, this is something that one of the clients told me, is like empathy is almost viewed as a weakness, which I think is just wrong, but everyone can have their own opinion, I guess. But I think empathy is a really important human thing. Like for us to relate to each other, we need to have empathy. So that's just one thing, like emotional boundaries, and knowing when to like open up, but also knowing when to like hold back a little bit, because someone might not be ready to hear everything that you're going through. There's also material boundaries, and those are like monetary decisions, or like giving your items to other people or lending them as well. Like sometimes people can really like take advantage of like your kindness if you lend them things and they don't give them back, or you give them things and they just ask for more, or even like lending them money and then they don't return the favor, or they just keep asking for more again. So that's just like another way, like that's a pretty concrete example of a boundary. But there's also internal boundaries, which are things within yourself, basically self-regulation and energy expended on self versus others. So a lot of times I feel like people can try to help other people to the point where they're not focusing on their own lives and their own problems. And I know this happened to me in the past where I was like, I want to help other people. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm worth something or something like that. And I know that my boyfriend is a little bit like that too. He always says, I'm living my life for you and like for other people and to help them. And a lot of times I need to remind him that he has his own life and his own things to deal with too, and he should make sure that he's also on top of all the things he needs to take care of for himself, as well as taking care of the other people he wants to take care of. But yeah, I think that can be a lot of big problems too for like people who don't necessarily have a good sense of self-worth or self-esteem. It's just like they want to help other people more than themselves, and that can even like in turn make them feel better about themselves. So it's a really weird cycle where it's like, I don't feel good about myself, so I'm gonna help other people and not help myself, but that helps me feel better about myself. But yeah, there's also conversational boundaries, basically topics that you do and do not feel like talking about with other people in conversation. And I feel like these can change a lot, just like all the other ones, depending on who you're speaking with or how close you are with that person. I know that my best friend that I've had since like freshman year of high school, I'm gonna speak to her in a different way and share more with her than I do with coworkers at work that I am still getting to know, you know, something like that. Or like, I'm gonna speak differently with my family and my boyfriend than I will with people I am like passing on the street and we just say, hi, good morning, how are you, or whatever, you know. There's also physical boundaries. Those are pretty like self-explanatory. I feel like it's like your privacy, your personal space, and like, you know, your body, basically. Like, how comfortable do you feel with like other people being close to you, with hugs, with, you know, other things that I'm not gonna get into right now, but basically like, how do you feel about other people being close to you and being able to acknowledge other people's boundaries and also your own, and be able to tell people when you're not okay with something. And there's also time boundaries, and those are how much time you get to spend with someone or how much time you spend doing something. This can be anything from like spending time with someone, spending time helping them with something, or even something like working, like how much time you're spending working instead of, you know, spending time on yourself and spending time, you know, recuperating for the next work week or something. Like, are you working too much? Are you spending too much of your time doing things for other people? Or on the alternative, are you just like spending all your time, like, I don't want to say wasting your time, but like not doing things that are necessarily being productive for your life? Yeah, so those are the 7 types of boundaries. And I think all of those are really important to know and to acknowledge in yourself and in your relationships with other people. But now that you know like all the different kind of boundaries there are and like what you're aiming for, like how do you really set boundaries? I'm gonna like get into that next, but basically there are a few steps and it all comes down to communication, really. But being as clear and straightforward as possible, I think, is like one of the top things. Like, you don't want to like beat around the bush when you need something, or when someone's like overstepping your boundary. You don't want to be like aggressive or raise your voice with them or like come off as like, well, I already said aggressive, but like basically you want to be calm about it, but you also want to be assertive and straightforward and clear. You also should not only state what you don't want, but also what you would like. And you don't always have to say like don't touch me sort of thing. You can say like, could you please like keep your hands over there, or like, could we please not hug right now, or something like that, instead of being like, don't hug me, don't get close to me, or like, don't do this, don't do that. Like, instead, more advising on what you would like to be done. Or like, if let's say like you're always lending money to a friend or acquaintance and they tend to not return your money, don't say like, don't be super like mean or aggressive about it, but be like, hey, I have been like lending you a lot of money, could you please return some of that to me? Or also find out what they were expecting. Like, were you just giving them the money, or were they lending? And they should be like even open to returning that, even if they thought that you were just giving it to them because you're bringing it up to them at that time. So being like straightforward about what you do want done instead of straight up what you don't want can be really helpful for change, because sometimes people don't necessarily know how to fix something unless you tell them. So that helps, like telling them how to fix it instead of just saying don't do that. But also for those of us that are not really good at keeping healthy boundaries, but like let people in too much, or also like don't let people in at all, it can be uncomfortable when you first start practicing these boundaries. It can be really like an emotional experience, I guess. Like, you can feel guilt for shutting people out or setting boundaries. You can feel shame or remorse. You can also feel a little embarrassed if like you don't usually share something but you ended up sharing something, and all that. So like, this is kind of really an experience that we all can be really going through at any time throughout our day. Like, this is an everyday thing. Like, strangers can cross boundaries and you might have to set up boundaries with them. People who are in your life every day can, you know, be crossing boundaries, and you can even be like putting up too much boundaries and having rigid boundaries in yourself, and like that's something that you can work on every day too. So all these things are really important to learn how to manage, I guess, because I think in the long term, as you get more and more comfortable setting healthy boundaries, everything just gets better. I'm telling you, like, when I was able to tell my last job at the nursing home, when I was able to tell them, like, I'm not working a double, don't put me for a double, and they understood that, it was a lot better for me. And really, it wasn't a struggle every time when they really like took that to heart, I guess. And if you've been around, you know that there was this one time where the administrator wasn't respectful of my boundaries, and I wasn't very firm in them either, so she kind of took advantage of the fact that I wasn't saying no straight up, and then I ended up having mental health problems. So I think it was really on both of us. I wasn't able to set a firm boundary with her, and she didn't take the hints that I was putting down, like, I really wouldn't want to, but I will if you really need me, sort of thing, which is exactly what I said. And I should have said no, because I don't work doubles. 16 hours is just too much. I think it was really hard, but yeah. So I think when you learn to set those boundaries, everything becomes a lot easier. And yeah, so if you've made it this far, please practice those and like and subscribe if you've learned something and you haven't already liked and subscribed. So yeah, I will see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.